As original equipment manufacturers, or OEMs, improve performance efficiency, their equipment requires tighter and tighter tolerances. This means exact hydraulic pressures are necessary in hydraulic circuits, and more accurate gauges are necessary for pressure testing. Tifco's HydraTest line of hydraulic testing products offers a best-in-class digital gauge that meets or exceeds the needs of every OEM, dealer, and technician. A quality analog gauge, like this Tifco one, is a 323 type gauge. This means that if you divide the face of the gauge into 3 sections, the readings while the needle is in the middle third of the gauge is 2% accurate, while the left and right thirds are only 3% accurate. Therefore, with an analog 10,000 psi gauge, your reading can be off by as much as 200 psi in the middle range. For this reason, many OEM test kits require as many as 6 analog gauges to provide the needed accuracy required at the various pressure ranges. This is not a problem with HydraTest's digital gauge, since its accuracy is 1/4% over the full scale of the gauge. In other words, the HydraTest gauge will never be off by more than 25 psi over the entire scale of 0 to 10,000 psi. Let me demonstrate this accuracy. First, I'll pressurize both Tifco's analog gauge and the HydraTest digital gauge to 4,000 psi. These are both 10,000 psi gauges, so that 4,000 psi value is well within the middle section of the range. Now, I'll bleed off some of the pressure. Notice first that the digital gauge reading has lowered while the needle has not moved on the analog gauge, and this is a high quality gauge. The needle does not begin to move until more than 125 psi has bled off. So for a more precise reading, the digital gauge is the clear choice. The Tifco digital gauge is more accurate and easier to read because the pressure units are displayed in a straightforward numerical format. Look at that analog gauge. The needle has dropped down below 4,000 psi, but what is the pressure rating? 3,900? 3,800? Before getting a reading, a technician first needs to determine what the incremental graduation marks even refer to. This complicates reading the exact pressure during a test. To further show how accurate the HydraTest digital gauge is across its entire range, I've replaced the 10,000 psi analog gauge with a 1,000 psi gauge. I'll pressurize the gauge to 400 psi, easily within the center or 2% accuracy section of an analog gauge. Of course, the digital gauge will still be at 1/4% accuracy, and you can see the accuracy of the digital gauge even at this lower pressure. Another great feature of the HydraTest digital gauge is the display itself. It is big, clear, and most importantly, backlit. Assume you are taking a pressure test reading at night or under a piece of equipment and the lighting is bad. With the HydraTest digital gauge, no problem. But with the analog one, you may have to go back to the shop to get a flashlight. The HydraTest digital gauge from Tifco Industries features 1/4% accuracy over the full scale of the gauge, pressure units that can be displayed in 9 measurement systems, including PSI, bar, kg centimeter square, MPa, and KPa. There's a backlit display with large LCDs for easy reading, even in poorly lit areas, min-max capability for differential pressure readings, internal overpressure, vibration, and shock protection, and ASME B40.7 standard. It's approved for heavy industrial use with stainless steel wetted parts. An operating temperature of -14 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit, and an IP67 rated housing for water and dust protection. It features an improved, robust, molded housing providing over 25% more strength than previous models. The HydraTest digital gauge operates on 2 AAA batteries for 2,000 hours and is available in a 0 to 10,000 psi version or a vacuum to 1,000 psi version. The 0 to 10,000 psi gauge, the vacuum gauge, and even the analog gauge are available in several variations. Please look through the HydraTest brochure for further details. The HydraTest digital gauge from Tifco Industries really is a best-in-class product that will provide you and your shop the accuracy and precision necessary to to keep your equipment running at optimal levels.